Hello everyone, it's going to be beginning of November. I'm looking at my Cherimoya trees, the main ones. This is about the peak of their season. They're not going to look any better than this. They're getting very tall. And pretty soon the winter is going to come. And they'll survive just fine. The leaves will get blown around and torn up from the storms, but they'll hang in there and do just fine. Look at the size of some of these leaves. I mean, look, this is my hand here. Look at that. Bigger than my hand. But anyways, I just thought I'd kind of give you an update on what these guys look like before the winter happens, and then I'll give you an update of what it looks like during the winter, and show you how well these guys survive, or if not, if they don't. But they've survived 4 or 5 seasons already of pretty good storms and cold and frost, and but they've grown quite a bit this year, and that's what I want. Not a lot of fruit because of, you know, I didn't pollinate. I mean, I didn't pollinate this year, but I also pulled the leaves off really early, and all the leaves and flowers came earlier than the heat and the humidity, which helps them produce fruit. I mean, I could hand pollinate, but I don't really want to. Last year I had over 3 dozen fruit without doing it, and this year probably a dozen. So I'll do a better job next year, hopefully. But you can see, you know, I have a loquat in there. The loquats are doing much better now that they're getting a little more protection and shade. They get, look, right here, it's starting to flower. But yeah, these guys got really torn up this summer from the heat and the sun. And as soon as everything kind of started to grow over the top of them, and the angle of the sun started to get not so much overhead, but the trees start protecting them in the shade, that they started doing a lot better. Here's a young Cherimoya that's took off this year. So here's another view. You can see how these are all in mostly shade, but they grow towards the sun, and that's about, I don't know, about 10-12 feet up there, maybe higher. Yeah, they're getting, yeah, a lot higher, about closer to 12 to 15 feet. But yeah, really thrived this year, mainly because they probably didn't have that much fruit, so they took a lot of that energy into growing. And that's kind of what I want. I want them to get big and strong, so when I do have fruit, they're not gonna break limbs and you know, then I lose that whole branch, and then I lose everything on it. So, but here's some of these young ones that I had that took off this year as well. Like, I put this guy in the ground this year. Well, actually it was in the ground last year, and this year it took off, a lot of growing, and so this is obviously a good spot for this guy. My loquats are coming back. You know, this one really took a beating, and now it's getting some protection. It's not as hot. And here's my El Bumpo Cherimoya. And you can see the leaves are doing a lot better. You can see and when I first started, and I was getting a lot of sun and the heat, the leaves are really small and they weren't producing anything, and they're still on there, but you can see the new growth coming on. And now that he's got a lot more protection, so I know, I mean, some people are referring to me saying that they grow them in full sun, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're, you know, doing pretty good. Just my experience with my trees here. I had trees from back here, which were under this big Japanese maple, and I started them all the way out towards this direction. I didn't have all this stuff over here then, and and I didn't have all these plum trees there either. And the trees out here, the trees that are all out here, before I had the plum trees and this apple tree here, they didn't do so well. They were exposed, and the ones out over underneath this Japanese maple and protected behind me by this big pine evergreen, redwood or whatever it is, these guys did a lot better. And the further back they were towards the house and under this Japanese maple, the better they survived. So yeah, so you know, the ones I have underneath, and they're protected, and of course they're young trees, and as they get bigger they're able to withstand more. So like this one here is going to be, you know, he's getting to be a pretty good sized one, so he's going to be able to handle a lot more compared to some of these smaller ones. But they're getting there, and I pretty much made it pretty dense in here. So I'm going to see how it goes this winter. Last winter these trees weren't nearly as big, and they handled the winter okay. So we'll see what happens. So I'm looking at some of the fruit that I have. As you can see, that this guy right here, here's one. Not very many this year. That's a decent sized one compared to my hand. Here's another one here, tiny one. And there's another one back right in there. I think there's another one around there. There's another one down here, tiny little one. These guys kind of started late. There's another one back here, started late. But yeah, there's fruit on here. These guys are really hard to see the fruit because they kind of blend in really well with the leaves. Here's a little one that started late. There's another one back there that started late. So yeah, so for me, another one I just noticed right here. But anyways, I mean, the fruit really take off. I mean, they kind of pollinate when it's really humid and hot and the ground is moist and it's captured in by all the density in here, and then they're able to hold on to that pollen and they get fruit. So but when I pull all the leaves, which stimulates growth and flowers, and I do it too early before the heat and humidity gets here, I don't get as many fruit. And then some of these will be flowering late, you know, flowers here and there, and then the humidity, you know, lets them to produce the fruit. So anyways, but you can see, I mean, it's pretty dense in here with all the planting that I did. I mean, between this young one right here and this one of the original ones right here, well, that's 3 feet, 3.5 feet, 4 feet. And then over to this one here, this is my main one, my biggest one, and this one was planted at the same time as this one, and that's about 5 feet. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, the Cherimoya trees don't have a lot of density, and so that's why I kind of plant them close together, because I want to create some density. The branches aren't really full of, you know, they're not really thick with leaves and branches, so the overlap helps with that. So here's another little one right down here, and then right behind me. So they're about like anywhere from 5 feet to 3 feet between each other. And as they get bigger, the branches will start crossing over into each other, and then it helps create all that density, and helps me with the fruit. But and then it helps protect each other. So Like I said, these guys, they're in the shade when they're young, and then they grow into the sun. And I think that's how it usually happens in the wild. These trees, they'll drop their fruit underneath the shade of the main tree, and they'll have the protection of the main tree until they grow out into the sun. So as I look at some of these branches in here, and before I thought I didn't have that many fruit, but as I look, you know, as they get bigger, then you start to notice them. So yeah, it's interesting. You know, they get camouflaged very easily. They're the same color as the leaves. They have all these kind of like scaly thing on there, so they're hard to notice with all the leaves and stuff, and they just blend right in. And I don't really notice them until later. So I thought I only had about 8 before, but I think I'm gonna have over a dozen. So that's nice. The fruit take a long time. At least my fruit take a long time to ripen. 9 months to a year. Some of these larger ones will start to fall off during the middle of winter, and then I'll pick them up, and they're still hard. And then I will set them on the shelf on the counter for about 3 or 4 days, and then I'll eat them. They'll be just right then. So, but I just want to show you some of these. You know, that I do have some fruit on here. It doesn't look like it, but yeah, done nicely this year. So I'm looking at my young Cherimoyas over here towards the front of the house, and they're doing great in the ground. These I planted in the spring before summer. I started them in pots, you know, with seeds, last spring, and these guys are doing good in the ground. They're a lot more growing than the ones I have still in pots. I'll show you those in a minute. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with these guys this year. Normally they don't really grow that fast. This guy has been in the ground for 3 years, and finally this year it took off. So I don't know what the difference was, but all of them did well this year. Here's some more. I have them pretty close together, about 3 feet apart, again for density. Now you see here I have these plants are coming up, and these are from bulbs, and every year they come up in the fall and they last through the winter, and they get pretty dense, and they just pretty much cover this whole area. All of this is going to be filled in with these bulbs, and they're not just one variety, there are several varieties, and I'm not worried about that because look, you can see on this one here, there's my Cherimoya underneath it, and the bulb is going to be protecting it. They'll be going up pretty high, and give it some insulation for the winter. So yeah, these young trees need a little bit more protection. And you can see over here by the fig containers, these guys are starting to come up, and I've had some that come up through the container, from the ground through the container on up through the pot, which is pretty interesting. So, but anyways, yeah, it's gonna look crazy. It's gonna like almost like hide some of these plants. Like this is a young guava right here, and this one last year I thought, you know, it died off because it didn't start as well as this one. I planted them both together, but after the winter it came back up, and so I think that the bulbs kind of help protect it. Now these guavas here don't really like the cold. These broadleaf ones, they need a lot of protection, so when there's frost they get burnt pretty good. So I have this tamarillo here that's also kind of helping protect these guys. So anyways, yeah, so the Cherimoyas are doing great. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do for next year, and I'll show you some of the ones I still have in pots. Okay, so we're in the greenhouse. Here's my little my little cherimoyas that are in the pots. These are the same ones that were I planted up front. And these guys, I just recently transplanted them to the bigger pots, which normally you shouldn't do, but they were in the small pots, and the soil was, every time I water it seems like it rinse out some of the soil, so and I put them in the bigger pots so it can hold more soil, and they've done better, a little bit better. You can see the new growth on there. So yeah, and then I have 3 more back here, and these are all seeded at the same time last spring. So you can see the ones up front are about 2 to 3 times bigger, and but these are my backup ones. They'll stay in the pot for the winter underneath the greenhouse, and eventually, you know, I'll either use them if I need to replace something or make another cluster somewhere. So here's my mango tree. I'm really trying to grow mangoes. This seems to be one of the hardest things for me to grow or get started. They're all from seed, so I'm learning. I really want mangoes bad, but anyways, so here's some of them. This is my largest one, and this one's about, this is like a 2.5-year-old mango tree that I have. So yeah, started a couple summers ago or spring, and they're still hanging in there. So here's my other mangoes that I've started from seed, and they're taking, you know, some, you know, this were from earlier this year. I got to be careful not to overwater these guys. It'll stun their growth and possibly kill them, you know, versus not watering them, which will dry them out. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge for me to grow these guys, and I've been doing it for a couple years now, and I've killed a bunch of his seedlings because I didn't know really what I was doing, and I'm trying to learn, trying to figure it out. So hopefully I'll keep doing better. So learn from my mistakes.